Welcome, everybody, to Postgame Takeaways with Inside ND Sports. I'm Tyler James at a hotel outside of Raleigh. He's the one and only Eric Hansen. Together, we cover Notre Dame football, recruiting, and more for InsideNDSports.com on the Rivals Network. And we're here to share our weather-delayed takeaways from Notre Dame's 45-24 victory over NC State. Eric, let's start on the positive end for the Irish. What did you like most about what Notre Dame did today?
I liked how they adjusted in just about every situation, including during the weather delay, being resourceful enough to go out to the concession stands, clear those out, buy their hot dogs and bratwurst, bring them back to the locker room so that the guys weren't starving and wet, just wet when they went back out, and then took care of business. But I mean, the way Jared Parker adjusted his game plan, the way Al Golden kind of tweaked things as the defense went along during the day, including losing J.D. Bertrand for a good chunk of the game, middle linebacker. And just, I mean, this has been really interesting to see not only Marcus Freeman adjust as a head coach from year one to year two, but everybody around him being just more adaptable than they were last year.
Yeah, and J.D. Bertrand, like you mentioned, was out with a head injury, so that sidelined him during the game today. We saw a lot of different linebacker combinations out there for Notre Dame when he was out. I liked how sort of the defense made plays later in the game. They made plays when needed, and then at the start of the game, they allowed the Irish offense to start slow. The Irish were not exactly firing on all cylinders offensively to start the game, but the defense was holding up its end of the deal. Certainly ended up getting up some yardage in the middle part of the game, but comes through with some big turnovers, forced a field goal attempt after Sam Hartman's fumble. I thought that was particularly important. And then Xavier Watts interception, DJ Brown interception. They really were making plays there in the secondary, 3 interceptions on the day. Benjamin Morrison with one earlier in the game. So the defense wasn't necessarily perfect. Gave up its own chunk plays and had some issues coming up with some stops in places. But I think when it really needed stops, for the most part, came through and made some plays and did some good things defensively.
Right. If you didn't watch the game, you're going to look and say, wow, Sam Hartman, he was 15 of 24 for 286 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's his third straight. I mean, his numbers, his pass efficiency rating is very consistent with what it was against Tennessee State and Navy, which is well over 200, which, I mean, if he can keep it there the whole season, he's going to win the pass efficiency championship. But that wasn't how the game went. There were some struggles there. He got sacked 4 times. He coughed the ball up a couple times. You mentioned the one near the end of the third quarter when it was 24-17, and all of a sudden NC State has the ball in the red zone, and the defense really set the table for then Sam Hartman to be brilliant when it mattered for him. I mean, he was very good. But, we've said all along, Tyler, big picture, Sam Hartman is going to raise the floor of this team, and the people around him can raise the ceiling. And I think today we got a hint that maybe that might happen.
Yeah, I think the offensive line struggled. Certainly, you mentioned the 4 sacks of Sam Hartman. Yeah. I think he would take some blame in some of those situations. But you look at the total yards per carry, 4.6, and that includes an 80-yard touchdown run. So that's not that impressive overall when you look at the grand scheme of things with what Notre Dame was able to do on the ground. So it's just a very uneven performance for the offensive line, I thought. Sam Hartman was able to make plays, and I think Jared Parker and the offensive coaching staff were able to find scenarios to sort of counter some of the weaknesses that the offensive line was showing, whether it was some play action scenarios, getting the tight ends involved. And so Notre Dame was able to, like you mentioned at the start, make adjustments offensively to figure out how to counter some of its weaknesses that were being a bit exposed by NC State's defense, and that really played out positively for the Irish in the long run.
Yeah, I'm sure that people, again, this season has been about every time Notre Dame plays, well, how do you project this onto the Ohio State game, September 23rd? Well, we're only 2 weeks away from it now. But as you look at the offensive line, NC State did what I kind of thought they were going to do, try to get Sam Hartman in the 3rd and longs, and then also try to confuse the guards. I mean, they're not going to bully those guys. They're both beasts. They can both knock you into next week, Rocco Spindler and Joe Coogan, but you can confuse them right now. And that's really something that Joe Rudolph and the offensive line are going to have to put their attention to the next couple of weeks in practice, is getting those mistakes out of their game, getting those growing pains just to be minimal as you get into some really difficult games coming up. It's not just Ohio State, it's Duke. Louisville all of a sudden looks kind of formidable, USC. Mm-hmm. So a lot of good teams, but again, they're rising in some areas that we thought, well, are they going to be any good this year? The pass rush didn't produce sacks, but it produced a very low pass efficiency rating from the quarterback, and they also stopped the run. And the safeties have really played well, especially today.
Yeah, I don't think that Notre Dame was really selling out in the pass rush. I think that was part of like trying to keep Brandon Armstrong contained. You don't want him to get a lot of situations where he can extend plays and make things worse for you. I still think there's definitely room for improvement with the pass rush, but I want to take a closer look on review of what exactly Notre Dame was trying to do and whether some of those things were working or not. In terms of a position that really stepped up on offense, tight ends were huge and not necessarily the one you would expect with Mitchell Evans being the number one tight end. Holden Staes.
Although we had a Mitchapalooza play.
Mitchapalooza, yeah, he got in there. He got in the mix as well. Holden Staes at 4 catches, 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he became the first Notre Dame player with over 100 receiving yards in a game this season. Both of the touchdowns were important. Obviously, the earlier one was more impressive just because he sort of bounced off a guy that tried to push him out of bounds and just kept going for a 40-yard touchdown. And that kept Notre Dame able to sort of keep NC State at bay. Davis Sherwood catches his first touchdown pass of his Notre Dame career in his home state of North Carolina. Yeah, it looked very similar.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame was doing a lot of multiple tight end situations, which allows Holden Staes and Davis Sherwood to be in situations like that. That was something that was working when Notre Dame was able to find some room on the ground. So I know after the Navy game, we're like, what's going on with the tight ends here? But the tight ends certainly came up huge for Notre Dame, and I thought played an important role, especially because NC State has such good cornerbacks, and you knew that, and Notre Dame doesn't necessarily have a long list of proven receivers. So you didn't feel like Notre Dame was going to be able to win on the outside repeatedly, but they were able to win with those tight ends and get those guys in the mix, and that was a really great recipe for the offense. Well, all right, that is it for our post-game takeaways here tonight. Make sure you check out the rest of our post-game coverage over on InsideNDSports.com. Hit the like button, share your biggest takeaways in the comments, and go ahead and subscribe to us here on YouTube as well, please. We will be back on Monday for Football Never Sleeps, our live show at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.